first of all, did the announcement shock you at all?
Totally. Had to check the calendar to make sure it wasn't April the 1st. Look, we've had some interesting and exciting partnerships in tennis over the years, even with Djokovic. You look at his hires of Ivanisevic, and before that, Becker, Agassi for a short while, Murray with Lendl. But Djokovic and Murray? No, did not see that coming. A rivalry which goes right back to junior days. They were born within 7 days of each other in May 1987, and that mirroring of their junior career went into the senior ranks as well. They played each other more than 30 times in some of the biggest matches, of course. And now a role change for Murray as he tries to help Djokovic win one more Grand Slam.
Yeah, I mean, they've always been mates, haven't they? And you talk about those tussles on the court. So how do you see this player-coach relationship playing out?
Yeah, I think as with most things in Andy Murray's life, it's been quite deep over the years. Have they always been mates? Not necessarily convinced of that. There was a famous photograph after Murray lost the 2015 Australian Open final when he was sort of like glaring a little bit, and you sort of wondered what he was thinking at the time. But here they are at a World Tour finals lining up together. They played in 2016 at that event. In the final, Murray won it and became world number one. So it's a rivalry which has really developed. The Wimbledon final of 2013, of course, multiple other Grand Slam finals, the French final of 2016, which was an extraordinary achievement for Murray to get that far. Djokovic won their first few battles and certainly was almost like one step ahead in terms of his career progression at the very highest level. And of course, is still going at the age of 37, which now Murray, of course, is unable to do, having announced his retirement this summer. But I just think this is a fascinating partnership. And could Murray be the final little element which helps Djokovic over the line onto that record-beating number of 25 Grand Slams?
Yeah, that's the question, isn't it? I mean, it has only been a couple of months, like you mentioned it, since the summer, since he announced his retirement. Are you surprised how quickly he's missing tennis and wants to come right back?
Well, I'm surprised how quickly it is until he's taken a prime job. I mean, 3 months into retirement, and he's coaching arguably the greatest player of all time. I mean, that's not bad, is it, in terms of career progression? I think it'll be fascinating to see how long this relationship lasts. I mean, what, for example, happens if Djokovic wins the Australian Open? Does Djokovic retire on the spot? And does the relationship therefore end? And Murray has done his job and can walk away and say, I'm the greatest coach the world has ever seen. I think he'd love to work with younger players. I'm sure he'd love to work with British players as well. I gather he's had no shortage of offers since he has actually retired. But clearly this is one that excites him, the chance to go to Australia, to work with Djokovic in the build-up to the Australian Open and then through the tournament. This is a tournament that Novak has done so well in over the years. 2024 was a little bit of a changing of the guard in men's tennis in the sense that he didn't win one of the big prizes. Yannick Sinner and Carlos Alcaraz, more than a decade and a half his junior, did. They mopped up, they won 2 apiece. And now the challenge is for Djokovic. How do I get back on the winner's rostrum? How do I unseat Sinner, unseat Alcaraz? And he can do it he knows he's got the game. Now it's about the strategy. And that's where Murray can come in, bring his huge tennis IQ, his ability to read the data in a way that very few people are. And maybe, as I say, could be that final element to help Djokovic get over the line.
Yeah, and the fact that he's kind of like his peer as well. And, you know, they're just going to be kind of, I think Murray will tell it how it is, perhaps, you know. I think, is that an element that perhaps Djokovic really needs to get him over that line, as you say?
Well, that will be an interesting moment, won't it? If there's a little bit of tension between the court and the players' box. And we've seen Andy, of course, dish that out over the years to numerous coaches. I wonder what will happen if Novak does it to him. But I think that telling it like it is point is a really interesting one, Vicky, because in tennis, you don't always get that from coaches. Coaches sometimes feel they're lucky to have a job and don't necessarily want to rock the boat. That's not saying they're bad at what they do. They're all the coaches I know are exceptional at what they do. But it's an interesting dynamic, a curious dynamic, isn't it? When you come into the camp of someone who effectively knows more than you do. So what can you bring? What from the outside can you bring in? And of course, what Andy can bring is that very unique perspective of playing Novak, of losing to him, but also beating him, working out ways to dismantle the Djokovic game on the biggest stages against and in the biggest matches. You know, he did it at Wimbledon in 2013, for goodness sake, when the pressure was at its absolute height. So I can see Andy reflecting on some of those battles over the years, but also analysing the opponents as well, breaking down the Sinner game, the Alcaraz game, and looking at Novak's strength that he can look at with first-hand experience and say, what can you do that can really get the better of these young bucks? And I think there's every chance that this could be a really successful relationship.
Yeah, just funny, then you touched on it a little bit. I'm sure the Brits, the young Brits, I mean, he's always been very fair and giving his ear and giving his advice anyway. But do you think that there could be a future for Andy Murray in coaching, and perhaps the Brits, like the Emma Raducanus, I'll whisper her name quietly, I hope they've made up, or Jack Drapers of the world can get Andy Murray on board, do you think?
Yeah, I'd love to think so. I think this Djokovic proposal is interesting in the sense that it could be just one tournament. It could be one Grand Slam. It could be a Grand Slam winning relationship. And could it be like a mic drop moment from Djokovic? He gets to 25, wins the title with Murray in his corner, and decides to retire on the spot. It's entirely possible. So then what happens? Murray can look at absolutely those British players moving forward, and I'm sure they would have him on board in an absolute heartbeat. They've both the names you've mentioned have benefited from his wisdom and his court time over the years as well. I see the Draper relationship moving forward as potentially very interesting, although Jack has an exceptional coach in James Trotman, who is up there with one of the best coaches in the world, in my opinion. So I don't think he'll be wanting to move on from that. But could Andy Murray actually sort of change the boundaries in terms of what we perceive as the correct player-coach relationship? Could he become more of a consultant working at distance? Could he be on the end of a phone? I'm sure he is right now on the end of a phone if those guys need it. So I think there are so many options moving forward for Murray in the coaching world. One thing's for sure, when he has this taste with Djokovic, I'm sure it will give him the bug again. Not the bug of playing, but the bug of being there at the big events, trying to work out ways of beating the best, because that's what Andy has done his whole life, and I don't think he wants that to stop.
No, I couldn't agree more. Always lovely to talk to you. Thanks ever so much, Jonathan.